The wind howled outside like a dying animal, rattling the steel walls of the outpost with each icy gust. I stared out through the frost-bitten window, the darkness pressing against the glass like something alive. Midnight in the Arctic Circle was a beast all its own, sunless, suffocating, and unnaturally still. The radio crackled behind me, the only sound in the silence that stretched so long it started to feel like time itself had stopped. It's been 3 weeks since I arrived here. The research team flew out after their rotation, leaving me alone to monitor the station. Just a standard protocol. One person always stays behind for night shift support until the next team arrives. I was fine with it. No people, no noise, just data logs and frost. But something feels wrong this time. Very wrong. It started the second night. At first, I chalked it up to the cold. You begin hearing things when the wind screams for hours straight, whispers, thuds, even voices that aren't there. But what I heard that second night was different. There were footsteps outside the station. Slow. Crunching. Deliberate. I paused my logging and listened. They circled the outpost once. Then stopped beneath the east-facing window. There was nothing out there. Nothing should be out there. Not for hundreds of kilometers in any direction. I didn't open the door. I didn't move. I just waited, holding my breath, until the footsteps eventually faded into the wind. I told myself it was the ice shifting, or maybe a loose piece of equipment. But I didn't believe it. I still don't. The frozen outpost, known officially as Research Station Vostok 17, is a relic of Cold War-era paranoia, located in a region so remote it doesn't even appear on most maps. Old Soviet architecture, barely updated since the 80s. Thick walls. No windows on the lower floors. It was meant to withstand blizzards and time, but it wasn't built for this. Whatever this is. Night 4, I started locking every door inside the station. Not that locks would help, but it made me feel less exposed. My routine became tighter: eat at 1800 hours, run systems diagnostics at 1900 hours, check the perimeter cameras at 2000 hours, review weather data from 2100 hours to midnight, then try to sleep while the wind screamed through the vents. Only I never slept. Not really. I started seeing movement on the cameras. Quick flashes, something darting past camera 3, or standing still far out in the snow on camera 5. The worst was when I caught it on camera 7, a figure. Human-shaped. Just standing there. It wasn't wearing any Arctic gear, just a pale body, naked, maybe, and it wasn't moving. I watched it for almost 15 minutes. Then the screen cut to static. I ran a systems check, rebooted the camera feed, but by the time it came back online, the figure was gone. I told myself it was a glitch. An optical artifact. But the next morning, I found something near the entrance door. Not footprints. There hadn't been any snowfall to leave imprints in, but something worse. Claw marks. 4 deep, jagged lines across the steel door, as if something had tried to pry it open with unnatural strength. The door was dented. Bent inward. I stopped sleeping after that. By the 10th day, I was running on caffeine, fear, and routine. My hands shook even when I wasn't cold. I started hearing things inside the station, soft creaks in the ventilation system, the faint sound of breathing near the lab. I checked every room, every corridor. I even opened the emergency crawlspace near the comm center. Nothing. But every night, the thing came closer. On the 11th night, I finally made the mistake of going outside. It wasn't a brave decision. One of the external generators had shut down. Power was dipping and temperatures inside were starting to drop. I suited up, armed myself with a flare gun, standard issue, and opened the hatch into the night. It was dead quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, but the kind that feels watched. The sky was black. The snow crunched beneath my boots, brittle and dry. I moved fast to the generator, only 10 meters from the main door. My breath clouded in the air like smoke. As I worked to restart the unit, I heard it. A click. Then another. It was like bones snapping in rhythm. Slowly. Deliberately. It came from behind the storage shed to my left. I froze. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst from my ribs. Then it appeared. Not fully, just its outline. It emerged from the dark, crawling low, its limbs too long, its movements jerky and uneven like a marionette handled by invisible strings. I fired the flare. Light erupted, throwing shadows across the snow, and for a moment I saw it. Pale skin stretched tight over a long, thin body. Black, sunken eyes that didn't blink. A jaw that unhinged far too wide. It screamed. Not with sound. With pressure, a blast of infrasound that shook my bones and made my vision blur. I stumbled backward, hit the ground, the flare flickering out. By the time I scrambled inside and slammed the hatch shut, I couldn't feel my legs. I passed out against the door, shaking. When I woke hours later, the generator was still down, and the backup power had kicked in. Inside the air was freezing. I looked at the door. The outer panel had been warped. Whatever that thing was, it had gotten closer than ever before. Today is day 16. I haven't seen the sun in over 2 weeks. I've lost weight. I stopped eating much. My hands have cuts from gripping tools too tight. I talk to myself now, just to hear a human voice. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that last night, it knocked. Just once. A soft, slow knock on the front hatch at 2:17 a.m. It was polite. Come. And when I looked at the camera feed, there was nothing there. Just empty snow. I can't leave. There's no evac until the next supply run, 14 days from now. Comms are barely functional. I sent out a distress ping but got no response. I'm alone. And every night, it gets closer. I found claw marks in the kitchen this morning. Inside. It's not just outside anymore. I'm writing this now because I think I'm losing track of time. And sanity. I need to document it. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe I'll make it to the next rotation. But if not, let this serve as a warning. There's something hunting out here. It's patient, intelligent, and it knows I'm alone. If you ever take a job like this, if you ever find yourself working the night shift in a frozen outpost, don't ignore the footsteps. Don't open the door. And whatever you do, never, ever go outside after midnight. When I opened my eyes, the lights were out again. Not dim, off. Pitch black. The emergency backup generator must have died sometime during the night. I couldn't remember falling asleep, and that terrified me more than anything else. I had promised myself I wouldn't sleep again. Not since the knock. Not since the coffee. But there I was, slumped in the corner of the comms room, the flare gun still loosely clutched in one hand. The flare was gone. I scrambled upright, hands shaking in the cold, the breath fogging in front of me a thick and steady cloud. I pulled my flashlight from my coat and flicked it on. The beam flickered before stabilizing. My heart dropped when I saw what was on the far wall. Another note. This one written in charcoal, smeared in wide, jagged letters. Stay awake. The air in the room felt heavier, pressed down on me like a weight, like I had just stepped underwater. I left the comms room fast, nearly tripping over my own boots in the dark. The hallway felt too narrow now. The shadows stretched farther than they should have. My flashlight's beam looked weak against the darkness, like it was trying not to disturb it. I made for the main control room. My priority was to check the power relays and get the main generator online. If I didn't, I'd freeze to death before the creature even got another chance. The corridors groaned with every step, the building shifting as if reacting to me, metal straining under invisible pressure. As I passed the locked lab, I heard the sound again. Breathing. Deep. Slow. Just beyond the door. I stopped. My body went still, adrenaline flooding every cell. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I knew if I made a sound, it would answer me. So I moved. Slowly. Silently. Past the lab. Down to the sublevel where the generator sat inside its metal cage of whirring engines and humming pipes. Only now, everything was silent. And the metal cage door hung open. That door was never supposed to be open. Inside, the main console had been ripped apart. Wires yanked from their sockets, switches broken, panels shredded like paper. At first, I thought maybe the thing had sabotaged it. Then I noticed something worse. The damage wasn't random. It was methodical. Like someone who knew exactly how the system worked had dismantled it. Not destroyed. Disabled. I backed away, flashlight still darting from shadow to shadow. I couldn't stay down there. Whatever had been inside the room could still be nearby. I needed warmth, power, light. I needed something, anything, to remind me I was still alive. Back in the operations center, I lit one of the last remaining emergency heat lamps and wrapped myself in the tattered station blanket I found hanging near the security locker. The warmth was weak. Barely a pulse of heat. But it was something. That's when I saw the monitors. All 7 external cameras were frozen on a single image. Different angles, different distances, but the same thing in every one. That figure. The one with the long limbs. The hollow eyes. The pale skin stretched over its body like something dried out and forgotten. It stood unmoving in all 7 feeds. Like it was posing. Watching. Surrounding. And then, one by one, the feeds flickered to black. I slammed the keyboard, tried restarting the camera system. Nothing. Just static and the faintest whisper, like radio signals trying to form words from the dark. But then the feed came back. Just one. Camera 2, the one pointed directly at the main entrance. It was still there. Standing maybe 10 feet from the door. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared. And then its head twitched. Not turned. Twitched. Like it had suddenly become aware it was being watched. It looked directly into the camera. I shut the monitor off and turned away, heart hammering in my throat. By now I knew what it wanted. Or at least, what it was doing. It was wearing me down. It didn't want to kill me, not yet. It wanted to unmake me first. Make me question everything. Sleep, time, memory. All of it slipping away. That night, I found scratches on my own skin. 4 deep lines running from my shoulder down to my chest. I hadn't been outside. I hadn't even undressed. But the marks were real, burning, swollen, and freshly opened. I bandaged them the best I could, though my supplies were dwindling. The first aid kit had been disturbed too, gauze unraveled, scissors missing, one of the morphine ampoules gone. I didn't take them. Unless I had. Unless that thing had used my hands. My body. There were gaps in my memory now. Black holes where hours vanished without trace. I found a log I don't remember writing. It was in the operations logbook, dated the night before. My handwriting. My signature. And yet the words were not mine. We're not meant to be alone here. The ice has memory. The void watches. It sings to those who listen long enough. Soon, I will answer. I dropped the book. Backed away like it might bite. Then I heard the piano. Just 3 notes, echoing through the ventilation shaft. The same 3 notes, played slowly, perfectly. We don't have a piano. I made a mistake after that. I should have stayed locked in the operations room. Should have ignored it. But I couldn't. I followed the sound. Through the dark, down the corridor toward the old recreation wing. A part of the outpost no longer in use, sealed years ago due to structural instability. But the door was open. Inside, there were no lights. Just the sound of those same 3 piano notes repeating over and over, as if something was trying to remember how to play. I raised my flashlight. It flickered, and then I saw them. Footprints. Bare, human footprints in the dust. Fresh. Leading toward the far corner of the room. I aimed my beam ahead, and the notes stopped. Silence swallowed the air. And in that silence, I heard a voice. Not out loud. Inside me. It said, "Come see what you've forgotten." I ran. Back in the command center, I destroyed the rest of the flare rounds. I don't even remember why. Maybe I thought I was protecting myself. Maybe it convinced me to. I just know they're gone now. And something has changed. It's not hiding anymore. It's not taunting me through cameras and scratches and whispers. It wants in. At 2 a.m. exactly, all the doors in the outpost unlocked simultaneously. Every lock clicked. Every latch slid open. I didn't move. I just listened. And then I heard it dragging something down the hallway. Heavy. Wet. Slumping flesh against metal. It dropped it outside my door. I didn't open it. I didn't dare. But when I checked after sunrise, or what passes for sunrise this far north, I found a body. Frozen stiff. Mouth open mid-scream. His ID tag flapped gently in the stale hallway air. Sergeant Klemov, Arctic Supply Division. But I know for a fact that no new supply run was scheduled until next week. He never made it. Or worse, he did. This morning, the walls started bleeding. No, not literal blood. Rust, maybe. But it smells wrong. Thick and metallic, with an undercurrent of rot. It seeps from the vents and creeps across the floor like veins. I think the station is dying. Or worse, changing. Becoming part of it. I had a dream last night. A dream so vivid I woke up gasping. I was back outside. In the snow. Naked. Kneeling before a black stone that pulsed with heat. All around me, dozens of others knelt as well. Some human, some not. Their bodies fused with ice and shadow. Their eyes burned white. And they chanted. Not words. Frequencies. A chorus of tones that shattered thought. That rearranged memory. In the dream, I joined them. And I smiled. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. My skin is pale. My reflection in the glass is not quite right anymore. Something is changing in me. It speaks to me now more clearly. Not in commands, but in feelings. It wants me to leave the station. To step into the snow. To stop resisting. But I'm not ready. Not yet. Because tonight, I'm going to trap it. I've rerouted what little power I have left to the interior lock system. I've lured it in with a trail, open doors, flickering lights, old food, warmth. I want to see it. I want to look it in the face. If it has won. And if I fail. If this is my last entry. Then hear me, whoever finds this. It doesn't live in the snow. It lives in isolation. In the void between heartbeat and thought. And once it touches you, it never lets go. There was no mistaking it. Blood. Deep, arterial red, almost black against the glimmering snow under the moonlight. I stared down at the streaks like they were abstract art my brain refused to comprehend. It wasn't a smear from an injury, not some small wound from frostbite or a scratch. These were drag marks, lines cut through the snow like something, or someone, had been hauled away. And they led from the side of the garage where the snowcat was parked, right out into the white abyss of the tundra. My breath hitched. The cold was biting, but it wasn't what made me shiver. I turned back to the garage. The snowcat's door was open. I had checked it before locking up that section not even an hour ago. Briggs. I called out, already knowing it was useless. He hadn't answered the radio since midnight. Is this a joke? Man, I'm not in the mood. Only silence answered. The kind of silence that isn't really empty, but rather filled with pressure, like the sky holding its breath before a storm. I moved toward the snowcat cautiously, each boot crunch in the snow loud enough to make me flinch. I shined my flashlight inside. Nothing. Just Briggs's jacket on the passenger seat, and a splatter of something dark on the console. The radio in my hand crackled suddenly, loud and shrill. Andy. The voice was barely a whisper, distorted and faint. But it was him. Andy, it's in the storm. Briggs. I barked into the radio, spinning on the spot, scanning the horizon. Where are you? What the hell do you mean, it's in the storm? What's in the storm? Static answered. Then a sound like claws scraping metal. And then, a scream. Choked, guttural, cut off mid-breath. I stood frozen. Not from the cold this time, but pure dread. I couldn't leave. Protocol dictated I stay until the next rotation came in. 48 more hours. But protocol wasn't built for whatever was out here. I sprinted back inside the main facility, locking the doors behind me and pulling every deadbolt I could find. My heart was hammering, lungs burning. For a moment, I just stood there in the mess hall, trying to process what the hell was happening. I thought of the Outpost's cameras. There were exterior ones around the garage and the south perimeter. Maybe I could rewind the footage and see what happened to Briggs. The camera room was tucked behind the main office, a tiny closet with 2 flickering monitors and a sluggish interface. I brought them to life and started scrubbing through the last few hours of footage. For several long minutes, there was nothing but blowing snow and shadows. Then, at 1:42 a.m., I saw it. Briggs had gone out to the garage. He opened the snowcat's door, leaned in, then stopped, frozen mid-movement. And then something crawled into frame. I blinked hard. At first I thought it was just distortion from the wind. But no, this thing had form. It was like the snow itself rose into a vaguely humanoid shape, but wrong. It shimmered, translucent, with limbs too long and jagged, like broken ice. And it moved with an inhuman smoothness, flowing more than walking. It reached Briggs in seconds. The camera fuzzed out as static overwhelmed the feed, but in one flicker of clear video, I saw it, its face. If you could call it that. Hollow, black eyes sunken into a white mass. A mouth that didn't open but cracked like dry clay. And then, nothing. I slammed the monitor off, heart racing, bile rising in my throat. I had no words. No rational thoughts left. I wasn't alone here. I stumbled back into the hallway, intending to grab the emergency beacon from the supply room. That's when I saw the lights flickering. And the temperature had dropped drastically. The warm interior that had been a safe haven moments ago now felt like a walk-in freezer. My breath was visible again. Frost had begun to bloom across the walls. The storm outside wasn't just weather. It was following something. I grabbed the emergency flare gun and radio, barely able to keep my hands from trembling. The beacon required line of sight to the tower antenna on the roof, meaning I had to go outside. But I needed help. I needed extraction. With every layer of clothing I could find, I opened the airlock and stepped into the storm once more. Visibility was near zero. The wind shrieked like it was alive, each gust carrying whispers that made me doubt my sanity. I moved slowly, hugging the side of the building as I rounded toward the access ladder leading to the roof. The beacon was in a small weatherproof case bolted near the antenna array. As I climbed, my gloves slipped, slick with ice forming even on the ladder rungs. I cursed and kept going. I couldn't stop now. When I reached the top, I pried the case open and activated the beacon. A blinking red light began to pulse, searching for the distant satellite that would signal the mainland base. I started breathing easier. Then I heard the scrape, metal on metal, coming from below. Looking down, I saw it. The shape. The thing. It was crawling, no, slithering, up the side of the building. Its fingers left ice trails where they touched. Its head turned toward me. And despite the storm, I could feel it watching me. Not seeing. Knowing. I bolted. Practically fell down the ladder, stumbling to the ground and rushing back to the airlock, only to find it frozen shut. Ice, thick and glassy, sealed the handle. Behind me, the creature was near. I turned and fired the flare gun. The light exploded in the darkness, casting long shadows across the snow. The thing recoiled, just slightly. Enough. I smashed the flare gun against the door's control panel, shattering the ice-covered buttons. The mechanism gave way, the door hissed open, and I fell inside, sealing it shut behind me. For the next hour, I sat in the equipment hallway, staring at the metal, listening for sounds outside. The beacon was on. Help would come. But the thing wasn't gone. I could still hear it, sometimes, a hiss in the vents. A whisper in the pipes. The way the temperature kept fluctuating even though the systems were stable. At 5:03 a.m., the radio crackled again. Andy, it's still out there, and it's hungry. It wasn't Briggs this time. It was my voice, repeating over and over again. But I never said those words. I didn't know what this thing wanted, or why it had come to this outpost. But I was certain now. The storm was its cloak. And it was only getting started. By morning, if you could call it that in the endless Arctic twilight, I had stopped trusting the radio. Every hour or so, it repeated something it shouldn't have. Sometimes it was my voice, like before. Other times, it was Briggs's. Once, it was my sister's voice, even though she was thousands of miles away. She said my name the way she used to when we were kids, soft, urgent, scared. The thing out there, it wasn't just hunting. It was listening. And it was learning. I barricaded the central wing as best I could using supply crates, tables, even steel tool chests dragged in from the workshop. I smashed every vent I could reach, hoping to cut off its slithering paths. Still, it moved in the walls, quiet as frost, but no less deadly. At 9:17 a.m., the beacon responded. A ping. Then a transmission. Outpost Vega, 7, this is Terrabase Command. Signal received. Rescue inbound ETA 12 hours. Hold tight, over. 12 hours. 12 hours in this place was an eternity. I sat beside the mess hall heater, the only functioning one left, and kept my eyes on the hallway beyond the glass partition. It hadn't breached this area yet, but I had the creeping sense that it wasn't in any rush. No, it was studying me. Every hour that passed, the power dropped lower. Lights flickered. The base groaned with frost, like something tightening around its bones. The silence stretched too long between the random bursts of static from a radio, always followed by whispers, or scratches, or the mimicked voices of the dead. At one point, the sound system kicked on, even though I hadn't touched it. From the corner speakers in the mess hall came a strange loop. Go outside, go outside, go outside. It sounded like me, but distorted, off-tempo, like a warped recording. I stood and ripped the speaker wires out of the wall. The thing wanted me to leave the safe zone. It needed me exposed. Vulnerable. I was almost beginning to feel like I understood the rules it played by. That was when I remembered something, one of the older research logs stored in the communications cabinet. It had been mentioned in passing in my briefing weeks ago, filed as Project ICE Echo. No one explained it in detail. But now that I thought about it, maybe I should have looked sooner. I forced open the comm storage and found the logbook, a heavy binder marked ICE Echo, Phase 1, Acoustic Response Testing. Dates, 1989 to 1991. This outpost had been active for longer than I realized. I flipped through the pages, hands trembling. Initial anomaly recorded during deep frequency testing at site perimeter. Unusual delay in echo return time, inconsistent with topography. Playback analysis suggests mimicry embedded in frequency return. Echo not simply reflected, it responds. Recommending isolation of echo-affected zones. Possible presence of bioacoustic entity. Extremely low thermal signature. Uses ambient storm frequencies to mask locomotion. Phase 2 suspended. Site locked down after 3 personnel disappeared. Last transmission logged from Dr. M. Green. Don't answer if it sounds like me. My heart dropped. This place had always been haunted. Not by ghosts, but by something deeper, colder, older. It could use sound. It could mimic voices. It could speak. And somehow, it had survived all these decades, hiding in the ice, using the storms to move between isolated posts like a parasite. I stared at the last page of the log, where Dr. Green had scribbled a crude drawing of concentric circles, like sonar waves, surrounding a single black spot. Beneath it, asterisk, it echoes, but it isn't hollow. Asterisk. A sudden noise made me drop the log. 3 knocks. Sharp. Precise. At the entrance to the mess hall. I crept toward the door, keeping low. Peered through the reinforced glass. Nothing. Then, asterisk a voice. Asterisk. Andy, it's Briggs, it's me. Please let me in. I'm hurt. It got me bad. It was his voice. But wrong. Too steady. Too loud, despite the door being sealed. I said nothing. Held my breath. Andy, come on. You saw the blood. I'm not one of them. There was more than one. I backed away, barely resisting the urge to scream. My thoughts spiraled. If there were more, then what was the thing I saw climbing the building? Were they hunting alone, or coordinating? The knocking stopped. Then came a new voice. My own. Andy. We're already inside. I spun, just in time to see the hallway lights blink out one by one. Darkness swallowed the corridor. And in the silence, the soft wet scrape of something crawling toward the mess hall. I ran. Bolted for the generator room. If I could restore full power, maybe the heating systems could push it back, or reveal it more clearly. Whatever it was, it didn't like the light. It was drawn to cold and dark. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. Every step echoed like I was in a cathedral, not a base. My thoughts became slow, sticky. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. The cold was unnatural now, biting through every layer I had. I reached the generator room. Inside, emergency LEDs glowed weakly, casting a red hue across the frost-covered panels. I moved fast, resetting the breaker array. Suddenly, something slammed against the door behind me. A shadow passed the frosted window. No features. No face. Just outline. It whispered something I couldn't understand. But it wasn't alone. The room dropped into sub-zero. My breath froze in the air. I turned, and in the reflection of the generator's polished surface, I saw them. 3, maybe 4 of them. Tall, hunched, limbs like shattered icicles. Faces that weren't faces at all, just voids where sound leaked through. Each one perfectly still. Watching. Listening. Then they spoke, in unison. "You've heard us now. You belong to the storm." The lights exploded. I fired a flare blindly, aiming for the darkest cluster. The room erupted in light and chaos. Screeches, hissing, walls cracking as frost shattered from the impact. The shadows recoiled. Some vanished. One collapsed, dissolving into steam and snow. I used the moment to restore the generator. Systems roared back online. Light flooded the outpost. And the creatures fled, into the vents, into the pipes, back into the howling storm outside. I collapsed in the control chair, body aching, hands blistered. The radio clicked on. "This is Terra Base Rescue Flight Echo 9. We are 30 minutes out. Respond, Vega 7. I didn't answer immediately. I stared out the window at the swirling white beyond the glass. For the first time in hours, I saw something new. Footprints. Dozens of them. All leading away from the base. But not a single one leading in. When the rescue chopper finally broke through the blizzard, I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was another trick, another imitation, like the voices, like the footsteps that never approached. I crouched near the comms console, staring at the glowing radar as it slowly approached our coordinates, hesitant to respond. But then it came. The heavy thwop-thwop-thwop of rotors. The sharp glare of a searchlight cutting through the whiteout, dancing across the top of the base like a finger of God. I stumbled outside, helmet on, thermals barely holding, face cracking with frostbite, and waved both arms like a lunatic. The wind nearly knocked me off my feet. The cold dug under my nails. But the noise was real. The light was real. For the first time in days, something real had come. The chopper descended slowly onto the pad behind the storage wing. A door slid open. A crewman leaned out, face obscured by goggles and mask. "You Vega 7, he shouted. I nodded, too numb to speak. "Get in." No. I didn't need to be told twice. They pulled me inside. Slammed the hatch. I collapsed onto the metal floor and felt heat, actual glorious heat, wrap around me like a second skin. The pilot turned back to me. "You the only one left." I opened my mouth to answer. Hesitated. Because I didn't know how to answer that. Was I? As we rose into the blizzard, I looked down at the outpost, at the cluster of buildings I'd lived in for months, the home that had become a hunting ground. From up here, it looked empty. Small. Insignificant. But just before we cleared the storm front, I saw it. A figure on the roof. Standing perfectly still. Watching the chopper ascend. It wore a parka. It even waved. But I was up here. And no one else should have had my face. I was in quarantine for 6 weeks after that. They said it was protocol. Said the stress could cause memory fragmentation. Hallucinations. Delirium from oxygen deprivation and cold exposure. They asked questions. Lots of them. What happened to Briggs? What did you encounter? Were you in possession of any classified material? Did you transmit anything off base? I told them everything, at first. I described the mimicry, the voices, the creatures in the vents, the thing that wore our skin and spoke in our voices. I showed them the ICE echo logs, but somehow they were missing from the recovered database. I told them the truth. They smiled, nodded, and wrote it off as psychosis. Stress response. Audio hallucinations. Textbook. They said it sounded like a story. I wanted to scream. But what was the point? They already had their narrative. So I played along. Smiled when they said I was recovered. Nodded when they asked if I was ready to go home. Took the medication. Passed their psych evals. But I never stopped listening. It's been 3 months. I'm back in my apartment now, in the city. Everything should feel warm and safe, but it doesn't. I keep the lights on at all times. I don't own a radio anymore. The hum of traffic outside should be comforting, but every now and then, I swear I hear the wind. Not the city wind. The howl from the Arctic. Sometimes at night, I wake up gasping, heart racing, certain there's something just outside the window, even though I live on the 11th floor. Sometimes, I hear voices in the vents. Not whispering. Not threatening. Just repeating. Andy. Andy, you're not alone. Asterisk asterisk. I started noticing things. Mirrors fog up when they shouldn't. The pipes knock in patterns, not at random. And once, just once, I caught my own reflection turning its head after I did. Yesterday, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a flash drive. And a single sticky note. It followed us. You brought it home. Briggs. I haven't plugged it in. I want to destroy it. But I need to know. Did he survive? Or is this thing just still playing with me? Tonight, I heard the fire alarm go off in the hallway. I stepped out. The hallway was empty. The sound came from every speaker. Then it stopped. Replaced by a voice. My sister's voice. Soft. Trembling. Andy, they're in the walls. I ran back inside. Bolted the door. Sat in the corner with a flashlight gripped like a weapon. The bulb flickered. Then the voice came again. You heard us. Now you belong to the storm. And I realized something I should have known back in the outpost. You can't escape the storm. You can only spread it. Epilogue asterisk. 2 weeks later, a minor news bulletin appeared online. Frozen outpost fire destroys research base. Cause unknown. An Arctic monitoring station formerly known as Vega 7 has been destroyed in an unexplained fire. All data has been lost. The agency has declined to comment on whether the base will be rebuilt. I read it with shaking hands. The storm wanted no records. No survivors. But one thing still remains. The voice. And sometimes, late at night, I answer it. The end.